April version, April 2017 version of the IMC Club at IA. Working on my radio voice today. Cool. The agenda is as typical. We've got an ugly kickoff video. We've got some introductions to make. And then for those of you who were here last month, because Paul ran so long in his presentation, he's ignoring me. Paul Chettam ran so long in his presentation.
I heard you, I'm ignoring
we kind of think that this discussion about NextRad and the colors and things like that is so important that we're going to continue that today. And so, first thing is our kickoff video.
A family of 4 killed. Witnesses say the plane was ripped apart in midair, the wings torn off during the flight. The parents and 2 children flying from Florida to Tennessee after a family vacation. Authorities now looking for what caused the plane to go down. Here's ABC's Maggie Rubin.
Tonight, an investigation underway into what caused a tragedy mid-flight over Alabama.
This is going to be a Cessna 210. They have lost communication.
And a mayday call.
Spun around one good time and then took a nosedive down. The wing came down over us and then the wind carried it over into the field.
The plane reportedly ripping apart in the air, debris scattering over a mile.
It's a mess. I mean, it's just a rubble of tin, you can't tell it's a plane.
At the time of the crash, authorities say a band of wind and rain came through the area.
Right now, weather does not seem to be the most likely cause, but it does seem to be a contributing factor in some way.
Family members of Joseph and Jennifer Crenshaw telling ABC News the couple were experienced flyers, and the flight was a trip home from Disney World with their 2 teenage children. It's the second small plane crash in less than 24 hours.
Plane crash! A plane just crashed!
On Friday night, a Cessna spiraled out of control in Georgia, slamming into this suburban home, killing the 78-year-old pilot. Authorities are still looking into what caused both crashes. In Alabama, investigators are having to sift through 5 different debris sites, something that will likely take several days. Tom?
A massive debris field. All right, Maggie, thanks.
Not that we really like to start these meetings with something that depressing, but this happened a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
This one, yeah.
The 210 in Alabama, and it's very germane to our conversation today. So we'll kind of revisit that. Do you want to lead through this, or?
You know as much as I do.
Okay. Well, so Radek, and Radek is the proficiency director with EAA, and they are rolling out a question of the month. And so you will probably, when I get it, I'll probably send it out to you. We're going to try and cover it, but because of our agenda yet last month, we couldn't get to this. And so we have the March one and the April one today. I'll let you see, kind of read through that. Has anybody heard of a cleared through clearance? Cleared through. I love it.
After I read it, I looked it up.
Did you find some information on it as a question?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. So that was the question for last month. Here is the definition.
Okay, so it could be just via instead of through.
My question here is, what is the time frame that they give you when you're through clearance? Like, you can't just go have dinner.
No, it's meant to be
Real
a quick stop.
No.
Isn't that what's been doing that the stopover flight plan?
Yes.
Good discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this
What kind of
is,
time frame and how do you rejoin your flight plan? You just take off?
you climb up and they get your transponder code.
And
So here's,
The flight plan never closes
right,
on a through clearance. On the stopover, I believe it does. And you get in the second clearance. I haven't done a stopover in a long time.
I haven't either for a long time, but, I'm assuming this is for like a non-powered.
It is.
Yeah.
But even if you call for clearance from a non-powered airport, they're gonna give you a time frame. They're gonna give you a void.
But this gets rid of all that. That's what the purpose of the through clearance is. So the scenario might be you're going from here to Omaha, and you want to stop in Akron to put on fuel or pick up passengers or something. You can request the through clearance with the controller, and your point is a good one. How long do they expect you to be down there? And that's what they're going to discuss with you.
So they'll tell you.
They'll say, yeah, I can give you the through clearance. If you can get back airborne in 30 minutes, I can do that. If it's
Yeah,
going to be
because say you're picking up fuel, you know, if you have to pump 100 gallons of fuel, for instance.
So they're negotiating based on what other traffic they've got coming in and
But
going
that's
out of
gonna-
that airport.
But that's gonna take you some time, so I'm thinking. It might take you some time, so, you know, do they let you land and then let some aircraft
No.
go?
no. They're holding the airspace
They're
for
holding-
you.
so-
The airspace is blocked for you, so they're gonna say, I'm sorry, we can't give you a through clearance because I have other traffic at the airport. Or, sure, go for it, nobody's going to Akron tonight. Go
So
for
they
it.
don't say, okay, you can go in there and take off between this time and that time.
No.
Once you go
It's
in
like,
there,
it's almost like you never landed. It's like you're going from an airport, instead of overflying it, you land, you put on passengers, you take off again, you're still on the same flight plan, still the same squawk code.
Do they actually give those?
Yeah,
Yeah, more than you would think.
That's surprising.
yeah.
Read the last sentence there.
Right.
It says it stops all IFR traffic.
so nobody else is landing.
Well, VFR traffic, good.
So the
Well, yeah,
airspace
but
is
I'm-
blocked out for you during this time. No one takes off IFR or lands IFR. It's all yours.
At that airport.
That's
So
it.
here's a scenario to think about. This is April's question.
They're gonna be expecting you to take off again.
Okay?
Yeah, I would think so.
The answer. So just, luckily, we had Jeff Hamilton, who will be joining us next month, is a TRACON controller, a supervisor. And he was in here flying the sim, so we went in and said, Jeff, tell us about this through clearance. And he said, yeah, they issue them quite often. And we talked about this scenario, and he was like, you wouldn't take off.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, why
And
would- why would
if you couldn't get hold of anybody, you know, go into town and get to a phone booth or something like that. Do they have phone booths?
I don't think so.
You know, they're gonna, after 30 minutes, after whatever maybe that negotiated time frame was, they're gonna start search and rescue. And the first thing they'll probably do is send the sheriff over to the airport.
See if you're there.
Yeah, and if you're there, and the airplane's there, or what have you, then it's good. So, kind of an interesting scenario. We can ask Jeff some more about that next
I
week.
got a
Because
through
they're gonna
clearance.
expect you to take off, but
Sure.
I'm not taking off.
I
don't think, who would take off? Of course.
He's got a parachute.
But he, yeah.
Does it work on the ground like that?
I got a through clearance. Well, I didn't know it was that, but I was on an IFR flight plane, and I don't know, I hadn't secured the door, and the door popped open, and I said, hey, I need to land. It was the airport right there, and I said, I guess I'll need to cancel IFR. She said, no, just let me know when you back up. Because I told her I was just gonna land and fix the door and get going.
Yep,
So she didn't close it.
same concept.
Yeah.
They didn't call it a through clearance.
They didn't call it that, but that's what it was. Yeah.
That would work nice if you're traveling, say, to Florida or somewhere and you needed some fuel and it's, you're going, this is a good time, it's cheap.
Yeah.
Place to go.
So you just, at that point, you just negotiate with the controller and say, hey, all right, so I'll fess up. I'm talking to Jeff and Sam, right?
Right.
So I'm going to Omaha. When I get near Akron, I really got to go bathroom. So he said, you don't have to say that. You can just say, hey, can I stop at Akron for 15 minutes? And they go, sure. So they just give you a through clearance. What's nice about it is you don't have to close the flight plan, you don't have to reopen the flight plan, you don't have to get the void time and all the other tools that go along with it.
So if it's a IFR and Akron, you just fly your own approach basically then, or you'll line
Well,
up
you
or
work with you on
whatever?
that.
Yeah, you work with them on the
Yeah,
approach.
but he's allowing you to land there.
Okay.
I've had them ask me,
Well, I have too. In fact, they need to know.
they would need to know it's not a mechanical or
Right.
emergency.
So you just
This
say,
was,
hey,
yeah, this was vacuum stop.
bathroom stop.
I just clicked the mic and said potty, and that,
They get a chuckle out of that, so, yeah. Yep.
Physiological need.
Yeah.
So, can you ask for a through clearance,
Yes.
or do they just have to get it?
You can ask for it.
Okay.
In fact, you can file for it. You can put it in your mark section on your flight plan. So you can say, here to Omaha, routing is Akron, request through clearance, stop
So you
at
just,
Akron.
you just put your route,
Spare.
Akron, Omaha, and then the comments you put through clearance at Akron.
Everybody get it?
I've never done it.
Cool. All right. So, a new member, Greg Daviscourt, joined just recently. And
Hey, look at that.
this was I couldn't find his private picture, but I found his solo picture. Did you intend to wear that nice shirt?
I didn't like the shirt.
Okay. Good, good. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Former glider pilot, and my son is an Air Force pilot, combat pilot, and wanted to get into general aviation, powered flight. And he called me up one day and said, "Hey, old man, I want you to go to Independence Aviation. I want you to fly Cirruses, and that's the only plane you'll fly my mom in." So that's how I found this group of gentlemen and ladies back there. Really enjoy it, and been absolutely flying my guts out ever since. Probably 6 to 12 hours a week, and I have a 24-hour trip planned at the end of next week. So it's been great. 6 months, a little bit over 130 hours, and climbing fast. So this is a very important place for me to be. Being around ladies and gentlemen like you that are very seasoned, because I'm in this game to not only enjoy the luxury of aviation, but to survive and learn from others. I mean, that's it's all about. So I study about an hour a night, and that's it. So it's an honor to be here, no doubt about it. So I'm all ears if you have advice, and appreciate being here.
I think we're all very pro-life from here.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's something I've noticed about being around you guys. It's a very serious group, and type of people I want to be associated with.
I'm glad you didn't say we're old and just said seasoned. So that's good.
And just to add to that, once you rent the airplane, we're not going to drag you off the airplane here. Unlike some other aviation companies.
What plane you flying, a 22 or a 20 or?
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah, this week I start out on Friday in a turbo, and then I'm going to bring it back and grab a naturally aspirated and head to California. So all nice planes. So now I'm just.
You guys got a new 17 turbo, didn't you? Did you just get a brand new Cirrus?
There's one coming. Chris
purchased
it.
Nice.
Putting it for a lease back with us.
Right.
G6 Perspective Plus. So now we all gotta learn the new avionics upgrade,
Yeah, the new buttons,
new buttons.
take me another year.
But tell me about Perspective Plus Trainer.
Sure. There, for a while, we had availability of a trainer with the Garmin avionics. Everything is real and in it, available for us to play around with. It's over in the Cirrus office at Denver Jet, and you have to have an instructor with you to get in there. But yeah, it's cool. I met Chuck over there, and you know, it's so interesting to see. I'm thinking, okay, a QWERTY keyboard, right? They brought that out instead of the old FMS keyboard. And I asked Chuck, I said, is this difficult to go for? Yeah, it is. And I'm thinking, you don't want to just jump in the airplane and go and then be messing with it, right? One other thing I was thinking is, I mean, I'm a touch typist, right? We probably all are. We're using two hands, not like this, and you're using this, right? And the knobs for heading and altitude were very logically relocated into the autopilot,
Just opposite.
but it's,
It's
yeah.
not where you're normally used to reaching.
So all this stuff, if you want to go over and play around with it, just let Chuck know, and we'll get you over into it. Doug Dillon just joined today. Yay, thank you.
Awesome.
Tell us real quick some stuff about you.
I haven't been flying much in the last 2 or 3 years because a single occurrence that happened, and I am recovered and or at least recovering. I'm trying to get back into it. So very likely I'm going to be purchasing an aircraft within the next 6 months.
Nice. And Paul dragged you in.
Paul dragged me in. He's a colleague friend of mine, and I really appreciate him.
Awesome. We have a couple of guests as well. We have Alex. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Alex?
I'm a 0-hour pilot. I go to school at Metro State. I just got a job at X-Jet down the road on the line. Done. He invited me here. I want to fly extremely bad. I'm planning on actually getting my private by like mid-July, hopefully, and then waiting for funding to get my commercial.
So you're in the aviation
Yes,
program at
yes,
Metro?
yes.
Are you in the pilot program?
I am.
Okay,
I am.
super.
Professional flight officer. for
Awesome.
State.
Well, thanks for coming. That's great, Don, and thank you for inviting him. And we also then have Ron, which Don invited Ron. You get the gold star today.
You get another
kickback.
Why don't you tell us a little bit?
I retired a couple of years ago from 30 plus years in the corporate world. Last airplane I flew was a 7X. And decided I needed to get back into the single engine world because that's the only thing I can afford to do from now on. And I've trained, took the transition training with the service with IAA, and really pleased with all the people that I've come in contact with here. So yeah, I'm running along with the rest of them. This is a whole different world than the one I'm used to being in.
Cool, well, we're glad you could join us, and thank you, Don. A couple other introductions. Karina Hegstad in back. Karina is Independence's Marketing Communications Director, and Colin Pranger is, what are you? No, he's a great new instructor here at IA, and we're using his photographic expertise we did some stuff with Chuck because, you know, Chuck's so famous now. Okay, sorry. Anyway, so thank you guys for coming too. Real quick, I did send this out, but if you guys didn't get it, IFR Magazine has a discount for IMC Club members, and so you can go to this, just remember, use this IMC 5. If you don't get this, you need to. It's one of the best publications around, okay? So that's all I have for new development. Does somebody have anything else other than United throwing people off airplanes or that is a new development that you think is, let's see, we got basic med. Everybody know what basic med is?
Yeah.
Okay, flying without a medical here coming up May 1st. So if you're not familiar with that, you should go to the AOPA website. They have a very good section on that. Yes?
I just got an email from the Kings about a week ago. They are offering a free course about basic med on their
Okay.
website.
On the King Schools website? Okay, cool.
I have a question about that. Wouldn't you think that the countdown begins for the 4 years when the laws go into effect, or from the time of your last class 3 medical?
What countdown?
You, as I understand it, you have to do a course online in 2 years, and then you have to have at least a physician visit within 4 years.
You have to have an active medical within 10 years of July last year. And once you have that, then if it's expired, you can go in and do the basic medical, which is basically the information package is a printout essentially of the 8500-8. And you hand that to your doctor with a sign-off page. And that's when your 4 years starts with it, when you get your medical signed there.
So when do the laws go into effect?
May 1st.
So we have to do that online package by May 1st?
There's the online course, I haven't even looked for it. Mayoka apparently has one that they're trying to get through the FAA. But there's a package already available. Can't tell you the website, but it's faa.gov in one of their, and there's a printout, you take that to your doctor. And then so as of May 1st, before you could utilize basic med, you have to get this done.
Even though I have my class 3 medical is only 1 year old.
Well, no, you're still valid.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I'm current for that. But to go into the new rules, do I have to do what you just said?
A year from now.
A year from now?
Yeah, it expires.
Yeah. When your medical expires, your medical expires.
Okay, so that's when I have to do it.
And it's the same rule as if you were going to see your AME, except you don't have to see the AME, you see your own doctor for the medical. It's really not that much different.
Yeah.
Not really.
So your medical expires when it expires, and then you need a new medical, whether it's basic med, which now, instead of 2 years, they'll give you 4. And what else? That's about it. So your medical still expires when it expires. So if you got a medical a year ago, it's still good for another year. You don't got to worry about it. If you want to take care, you want to use basic med a year from now, you go to your doctor with this package and you'll need to fill it out if they'll sign it.
Yeah, how's that worked out so far? Does any physician ever signed anything yet?
Nobody signed it. It's not valid until May 1st.
Okay.
So nobody has signed it. Nobody knows if anybody is going to sign it. A lot of doctors are going, I don't know about that.
Not sure the liability of that.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what the insurance companies say about it, whether they'll want you to still
A
get
lot
a
of
medical.
the, apparently a lot of the insurance companies have kicked in and they're saying it's okay. I don't know for sure about that though. But
Yeah,
I know a lot of the doctors, I
I
know,
talked about that. He said the insurance companies are okay with it.
yeah, I know in my office, I'm not signing basic med. Because all I see is liability. Because now I've just signed, I got nothing. As an AME, I got the FAA behind me. I got the courses and training the FAA has provided. I got the contact with the FAA that I have if I've got an issue. You know, not to mention, you know, flight surgeon training in the Air Force. I mean, I got it all backed up. With the basic med, I'm acting as a private citizen physician. And somebody then thunders their airplane into something, nobody knows. Nobody knows.
You'll be the first one in the lawsuit.
Yeah, wait for the first lawsuit. First lawsuit's going to happen, then nobody's going to sign that for that.
Well, what's the history of physicians getting sued, having done a medical, third-class medical on a person who
I don't
crashes?
think it's happened because we go when we first start doing this, we go for a 1 week course in Oklahoma City. That's no matter who you are. Like I was 12 years of flight surgeon, 1 week course in Oklahoma City, and then they put you through retraining courses every couple of years.
Right.
And I don't know that it's ever happened because there's an established, this is what is sufficient to do this. You get somebody who's just somebody's PCP and they go up there, okay, Dr. So-and-so, what is your training and experience to be able to do this? I can answer that question, a lot of people can't.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move because we've got a lot to cover. Who was here last month?
That was Zucchini Club.
So let's get through that and go right to the audio, or?
Yeah, what's our next? So let's just pause for a second. For those that weren't here,
It's online.
those that were here, let's talk briefly about the scenario so the rest that weren't here can understand where we are. We had a inexperienced pilot flying with a corporate or a regional airline pilot, right? And they're considering going near some weather conditions. And you all chime in, help me with the rest of the scenario. But
Las Vegas to LA. Yeah.
right, and there's some green/yellow showing up on the
Right.
XM, and so they're trying to decide what to do. So you got a more experienced but regional airline pilot that typically has a radar on their airplane, telling this other pilot, no, we've been in a lot worse, it'd be a good experience for you to go, helping this pilot to try to build some experience. What else? Sort of it.
Yeah.
We're trying to decide, should we go, what's our routing, and we picked the scenario. I think
Your options were
three different options.
you go.
Go ahead
or
and
you-
go back to Vegas and wait it out.
Right.
We're trying to
Let
do
the,
an
let the
alternate
regional
route
pilot
around.
be PIC. There's one on, I think, too.
It seemed like there was heavier weather coming soon to Vegas.
Right, there's another
If they
front
went
coming
back,
in.
they were gonna be pinned down.
Right.
Right.
So they're putting those external pressures on you of, do you want to be stuck in Vegas? I guess there's worse places to be stuck. But, those pressures of, well, do I make a decision to go ahead and fly through it because I don't want to be stuck in Vegas and I got to get home? Or maybe you won't get home. So that's sort of where we are.
So, and you had gone through that, but you wanted to.
Yeah, so then we had the guy that wrote it, which is Tom Turner here. He gave a little overview of some things, and now we're going to go to the instructor discussion. Okay, so it's called the roundtable. And these are all from pilotworkshop.com. One of their scenarios, yellow is not that bad. So we got my notes there. When to pause?
Let's hope.
Okay.
K?
K. K is the magic key to.
Tom, you've identified some serious traps here waiting for pilots that can misinterpret radar data. What is the message we're sending to our listeners here?
Well, I think that what we really need to think about is that the aerodynamics of light airplanes have not changed. For decades, the advice has always been to stay 20 miles away from thunderstorm activity. And in the context of this scenario, the potential for convective activity, or at least turbulent activity, the combination of the heavy rain showers in the hilly mountainous terrain there. The advent of cockpit weather displays can be viewed in one of two different ways. Can I use this information to try to get closer to the weather? Or can I use it as a means to more accurately stay away from the weather? And that's, I think, where we need to aim pilot education. Use these devices to make it even easier to stay 20 miles away from the hazardous weather.
That gets back to the understanding of just what a serious hazard to aviation thunderstorms are. And it really is easy. Tools can be used to help us. They can be used to hurt us. And this is a tool that inappropriately used will hurt us rather than help us.
I agree, but I'm not seeing this as a thunderstorm situation. And, looking at the options here, I actually like option 2. I like diverting somewhat to the south to the lighter areas. I'm in light precipitation, probably not even moderate. I have 2 sources of onboard data link weather to watch things progress. I have me in the cockpit, what I'm experiencing in terms of turbulence. And we can get at least to the point closer to the coast where we can let the worst of it pass by and then make a scoot up the coast. If we stay, we're stuck for quite some time if this turns into embedded thunderstorms, which I definitely don't want to go through.
Well, I've actually done several similar things myself many times where I have made a choice like going to San Diego, and I thought about that very hard in this scenario as well. The reason that I chose not to is because we have some pretty intensive rain showers, and I don't know the Southern California area well myself, but I have been out there a few times, and when it rains hard, it's usually pretty towering cumulus sort of cloud development bumping up against the mountains. And so as someone maybe who is not as familiar with that particular geography as someone who in this scenario is flying back and forth all the time, I'd be less likely to want to try to fly through it.
Well, I'm always a little bit leery of XM or ADS-B weather information because of the delay inherent in it. As one who got used to real-time radar, I've seen some big differences in the appearance of the precipitation on real-time versus the XM, for instance. But what element?
I know you use your XM, you fly near, avoid storms with it. Explain how you watch what's going on the multifunction display and how you see, what is your thought process as you're going along to give it a wide berth so you don't get near the bad stuff?
Well, you know, if it's green, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's, you know, it depends if the yellow is developing a little bit, you know, in front. It depends where the front's coming from, you know. So you're watching, you probably should know where it's coming from and where it's developing.
So good pre-flight to know why the storms are developing.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see that in the XM too, moving.
Right.
You know, like we were when we brought the plane back from Texas. Is what I'll do is I'll get on with the you know, the center and just say keep me clear. You know, if I'm embedded, then absolutely I will do that while I'm watching the XM. So if I see something kind of red coming up, it's like I'm just seeing something on the XM. Can you be sure I'm clear? Okay. And they've always moved me around this stuff, and I've seen it. You know.
Okay, so we have the ability, even though we'll talk more about the latency in the system, but we have the ability as we're coming along and we're seeing the weather develop on the screen to give it a wide berth because there is that delay there. So I'll give you a quick scenario. A client of mine, actually Dave, who's not here tonight, he's one of our members. It's his birthday. He's back in Florida. He was supposed to be here tonight. We're going to have cake. But he's not here, so no cake, sorry.
Okay. Or pizza.
Or pizza. Anyway, so we intentionally went to his place down in Florida with the purpose of trying to go find thunderstorms with his radar, because he was learning radar. And so we're flying along, we're in the clouds, we're talking to Tampa approach, and we're looking on the multi-function display, the XM display, and there's nothing. There's no yellow, no red, a little bit of green. But we put the radar on, and we're seeing some precipitation in front of us, fairly heavy. So we call the approach controller and say, hey, what are you seeing? We're seeing a little bit of turbulent or potential heavy rain in front of us. And he goes, I'm not seeing anything. Like, okay, so we keep going. And sure enough, we get into, we're bouncing around. So the point is, the radar was giving us no kidding, hey, there's some heavier rain there. The XM, it hadn't even shown up yet as any potential problem. So the point I want to make there is, the stuff, if it's developing rapidly, can be there and bite you. And we're going to talk about our 210 guy here, but it can sneak up and get you if you're not careful. So that's why your pre-flight planning makes sense. If there's a front coming through, knowing where those storms, why they're developing.
Boy, centers should see that stuff. I mean, there are live radar
But that
They have
radar
different capabilities.
That's delayed too,
is
isn't it?
not calibrated for weather.
And they
It's
have
calibrated
different
for picking up
capabilities.
planes.
Yeah, so, yes, they can see it if it's definitive and if it's fairly heavy, but it's not calibrated for
And
weather.
they have the ability to tweak it up and down too.
Right.
So the other issue is that the storm with a lot of moisture and it is gonna block the radar signal from seeing what's on the other side of it.
Good
If it's
point.
heavy, yeah, if it's heavy.
And that's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
People have flown into what they think is nothing on looking at radar. And in fact, it's a black hole out there, but it's behind the big heavy radar, behind the thunderstorm that you're about to go into. So it can be a problem.
So XM is painted from that radar that you're talking
Well,
about,
it's
right?
ground-based. I mean,
Ground-based
So
radar.
it's not that accurate either.
The XM is better weather radar than what Center is using to indicate.
Oh, XM is better, so it's a different system, is that
It
what
is.
I'm asking?
Well, and if you've got all this triangulation going on by different
So it can get front and back of the,
systems all over it, but still, if you've got a bunch of moisture blocking some of those, or if you're in an area where there isn't much coverage, and you maybe only have one set out there, and the signal gets blocked here, and then behind that is some great big monster that you go flying into.
So the point is, it's not black and white. It's not like, oh, there's nothing on my screen, everything's fine. It may not be. And we're gonna talk more about embedded thunderstorms here shortly. So, let's go ahead and move on.
I would bring into play here is Mach 2 eyeballs. Do you see cumulus out there? If you see cumulus, I wouldn't get anywhere near it in this situation, regardless of what the convective outlook was. I'm more inclined to go the route that Jeff just defined. Head down towards San Diego. If it takes longer, it takes longer. Stay away from anything that could conceivably develop into convective activity, particularly if I see cumulus. I'm out of here. I'm going nowhere near.
And your IMC, just to make it clear as we're talking here, for the scenario, you're in the clouds when you're making this decision.
Well, that assumes no brakes at all, that you don't get to see anything out the window. You know, that would be unlikely that you didn't take a gander at what was out there.
I have to tell you, gentlemen, that I was for option 2 until I heard Tom's explanation of how these gadgets work, and I learned some things from there. I think if you choose option 2, going to San Diego, it certainly is a viable option, but he points out some pretty good hazards. There's significant dark green down that way, as I recall, or some good dark green, which I've now learned, if I'm looking at my iPad, is actually the same decibel level as yellow. And I'm not inclined to want to fly through any yellow stuff, because the next thing comes is red, and we know that stuff is all delayed. So I've changed my mind, and I'm back with Tom, going back to Las Vegas.
Well, and I have to say too that, you're just started on this flight, and do you really want to be making it up as you go along, or do you want to be back on the ground in 10 minutes where you're in a much better position to evaluate and get the data you really want to make a decision, as opposed to, we've talked many times about the difference between making a decision on the ground versus in the air, and the more capability you have and more resources that you have, and the better data you have. So I think that would incline me towards option 1 rather than option 2.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to be the challenger here again. What more data would you have on the ground?
Real time?
Well,
when
what
we
you
say
see
real time?
on
Even the weather. Oh, so I thought you were saying you were talking about looking out the window.
If you sit down at the computer and pull up the weather, you're not going to see anything much different, maybe a little bit different than what you see in the cockpit.
I would accept that if I turned around and landed in Las Vegas, I pretty much know I'm going to be there for a while. Reevaluating on the ground really means wait until the system passes through in this scenario, the way I see
That's
it.
about the size of it.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
Now, back to Bob's point, I haven't flown in the scenario part of the country much. I fly a lot in the Midwest and in the Southeast United States. And over the years, I've learned that if I'm dealing with any sort of heavy precipitation, I want to be able to see it. And
Okay, so one of the comments one of the gentlemen made there was, I'm accepting the fact that if I go back to Vegas, I'm going to be sitting there waiting for the next system to go through. Is that really something we should be thinking about in our decision whether we should go into this bad weather or not? I mean, really? That that's what we're making our decision on, if I call that get homeitis, we gotta get back to California, if that's what they're making their decision on, I think that's a big mistake personally. So, he's talking about seeing what's out there. So one of my rules we'll cover at the end, I don't like to fly in IMC if there's embedded thunderstorms around. So how can we see the cumulus clouds or the rain shafts or whatever? What are some options? Typically the weather, unless it's some massive front, isn't solid from the surface to 20,000 feet.
Fly as high as possible.
Okay, so we might be able to go above it. And what do we see when we're above it? Anybody? Yeah. You see the old beautiful cumulus cloud over here, and you go, we're going over there. Stay away from it.
At some point you'll see lightning on your screen.
Might see lightning on the screen, okay? But visually, I'm above it. I'm flying along. I see the cumulus clouds. I can see one over here starting to come up. Stay away from that guy. But I'm visually moving my way around. How about going below? If the ceilings are high enough, what they call them high base thunderstorms, I believe, is the term. So I can be below the clouds, still be on an IFR flight plan, dodging the rain shafts that are pouring down out of it. So that's another option. How about in between? What am I talking about there? Going in between layers.
You can stay 20 miles away.
Stay 20 miles away, but I'm talking about here's a cloud deck, here's a cloud deck, here's a clear area. I can fly in that clear area also and look for rain shafts coming down. Okay? We're going to cover in a minute, how do we know where the clear area is? Okay? We'll talk about that. Okay?
If I'm not able to maneuver and deviate around most of the cloud activity, that's right there going to put me on the ground. I decided at that point. So if I'm in an embedded, a solid IMC situation like this, and I'm seeing some indications of what may be turbulence ahead, I have no other way to determine whether or not it's hazardous until I actually get into it. Personally, I'm going to turn around and land.
I think we need to really reaffirm what we had talked about briefly about understanding the differences between these various weather sources, and that's really what they are, is weather sources. And they're all varying depictions of some type of information that's coming to us. So understanding the source, and ADS-B may be a different source than XM, which may be a different source than internet-based. You don't really know where this stuff's coming from. Somehow it's coming through this pipe, and you know, it's being displayed to you in a manner that the designer, the developer of the software or whatever is decide to display it. So you have to understand that. But given that, I think also that we tend to can lead ourselves down a path by labeling it as radar. And it's not really radar. You know, you think back to, like, remember when airplanes used to have like radar equipped over the door as you were entering from the jetway? You know, radar equipped, we can fly through anything. Well, this isn't really radar. This is, it's information, and you have to use that information to base your decision on, and you can't do it in a tactical manner. It's a strategic planning tool, and you really have to understand that even that 20 miles from the edges of the returns may not be sufficient. And then in other cases, we get kind of led down a path where there's been many times where I've seen green or even dark green, and it's precipitation that's up at 20,000 feet. You fly under it, and you don't even get wet. So you really got to understand what all this information is telling you and use that to make the decision too.
But getting back to the choices we have here, although I tended to go with choice number 2, head down to San Diego, certainly Tom's choice number 1, the least comfortable pilot wins, I think really does prevail here. Now, I might think it's more reasonable to do number 2, but if the other pilot isn't comfortable with that, then that counts. That counts.
And have you really, validated that southern route? I mean, that's an alternate route. I mean, have you really done enough preparation to know that you're, not heading into something that's equally challenging just because it was not your planned flight? you're kind of making it up as you go along. And I always say, once you start doing that, you're kind of behind the airplane as opposed to in front of the airplane. And that's why I tend to favor the more conservative approach. And once again, do we want to avoid, or do we want to use the tools to skirt?
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I mean, I would think that there's a certain level to which you need to have the ability to make it up as you go along. Situations change. You do have an objective. You're trying to get home. And if it's within the capability of the plane and the people and within a reasonable margin of safety, then experimenting and making it up as you go along, as long as you're keeping your outs available, makes a lot of sense. You've got 2 pilots in this cockpit too. You've got passengers in the back who we've said they're okay with rain and some turbulence. They're not gonna panic if it bounces a little bit. So we have some latitude to work with here. I think part of the issue, or I really should say, what needs to happen is need to be some parameters, right? Okay, we can press on within this. If either of us get physically uncomfortable, we're out of here. If the radar returns, we're talking about colors, but the real key is DBZ level. And one way to look at it is to say that, 30 or lower, I'm comfortable intentionally flying into that, right? As long as I'm not seeing convective activity, the scalloping, if you will, or the contour line, some people call it, how quickly you go from green to yellow to something else, say, are really far apart. It's very wide and shallow. All right, that gives me some confidence. I'm not seeing lightning strikes. That gives me some confidence. I'm willing to intentionally fly into 30. I'm willing to continue on through below 40. I'm not going to try and go into it, maybe, but I'm going to go out of it without having to declare an emergency or immediately land if I'm not seeing other indications of convection. Anything above that, I'm out of here. I don't even care if it's still smooth. This is too much just energy in the air.
What does he mean by energy in the air? Anybody know what he's talking about? Okay, how about the term CAPE, C-A-P-E, does anybody know what that is? You know what it stands for? Okay, we're going to cover it on a slide here in a minute. It's convective available potential energy. So that's basically how unstable is the air once that thunderstorm starts to go. Is it going to continue to go, or is it capped off, or what's the energy available in the air to allow that storm to continue to develop or other storms to develop? So we'll look at that in a second where we can check for the CAPE, okay? Because that's a huge factor in whether we're going to have the thunderstorms or not.
Another big factor is how high the cloud tops are. I mean, that's a big deal. So if you're flying along and there's some 50,000 footers out there, man, that's a problem.
Sure.
If they're 12,000 feet, it's going to be I don't know if I'm right or not, that's going to be considerably less problem than that's 30 or 40,000 feet. So if you're flying along and it's green and dark green and the highest is 12,000 feet, I just can't see it being that violent.
And plus that's where you get above it and watch for anything growing. But yeah, if all your cloud tops are at 12, that means your moisture humidity is probably low and they're capped out at 12.
Yeah, and if you're seeing on the XM, I come back from Florida, I saw just the other 30, 40, it's like that's not the right place to be.
Right.
Even underneath them.
Give it a wide berth.
Yeah, big wide.
You don't want to be underneath that.
No, you don't want to be anywhere near it.
Yeah. Yes?
I agree with staying out of the weather, and I'm deathly afraid of icing. He made a comment about not knowing what the weather is. I don't know about anybody else, but if we waited till we were 100% sure of the weather, we'd never go flying. So the point about deviating and making it up as you go along, I don't agree. I think that is an option, because you're never 100% sure of the weather. The weather, it's not what they report. It changes. At least in Colorado, if it's accurate 6 hours later, you're just lucky. So I don't see why you wouldn't. And then you get there and it's not what you think it is, then you make another plan and another deviation.
Right, but
Or you land.
The key to what you're saying is, and what Gary and I started the conversation with, you're continually watching and you're seeing what's going on, and then you're taking action based on what you're seeing there, but you're always giving it a very wide berth.
Giving the berth, and just his comment about not hurting though is okay, you divert, and it's not what you think it is. Now you've got another decision to make. You turn around, or you land, or it's another decision point. There's
guess
nothing wrong with diverting.
I think, no, there's not. The worst case scenario is to be in IMC conditions, not sure what's going on, and these thunderstorms are starting to develop, and you're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Now you're in trouble, because you don't know what's going on. And they haven't shown up in your XM, because they're just now starting to build. That's our worst case scenario. And maybe what happened to our 210 pilot.
Well, the key to this XM is to come back faster. It's ridiculous. 10 minutes, that's ridiculous. Yeah, I don't understand why they can't just pop it out every 30 seconds. Or every minute. I know it's more money probably, but it's just electronics.
It's data rates.
It's even more than 10 minutes, it's more like
Satellite data.
potentially 20 to 30 minutes delay.
Yeah, that needs to
You're looking at
improve.
solar panels.
Yeah, then it would be better, but.
Yep,
What's the refresh time on Stratus?
good question. I
It's
think
the
you
same
still got the
system,
same
isn't it?
latency.
Pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It's the same, yeah. Both, yeah.
And they actually, XM Barron Services processes the images. So some of that latency is due to them taking the images and processing.
That'll improve.
There's an app called My Radar. You're probably fairly familiar with it, but it gives you a good picture of it fairly real time that you could check. Let's say you looked at the weather and you said, well, we'll take a look at that before we take off. You can pull that up and look at it. It'll give you the direction of the clouds, the top of the clouds, the intensity of the storms.
Yes.
And if
It's a
that
great
clicks
app.
with what you saw before, you feel a little better. If not,
That's different,
And that's good, yeah, my radar's a good one, yep.
well, and you also don't want to get in trouble east of Las Vegas because the terrain is very rough. Whereas if you're flying through the Midwest and you get in trouble, there are multiple places to land.
You have a lot more options.
A lot more options.
Good. So that's a great point, which is knowing your local area and where you're going. I think one of the gentlemen talked about, I'm not familiar with that part of the country. Well, there's another flag for you to say, you know, it's not my home. I know the weather here really well, but I'm out in Vegas now, going to California. I'm not that familiar with the terrain, the environment, all that stuff, how fast can storms build and all that. So that's another factor to weigh in on your decision making. It's good. Along with my radar, I'm going to show you another app which actually predicts radar, which is pretty sweet to show you what they're thinking. Okay, so let's move on.
Almost certainly going to be turbulence somewhere nearby that I want. And putting some kind of objective numbers helps get parameters, if you will, boundary conditions on how I'm willing to make things up as I go along the air and come up with a way to hopefully get home.
One of the factors for me in evaluating that, do I fly through green or not? Well, first off, Dr. Strawley's view that if there's any yellow or red in there anywhere, you need to avoid all of it because it's all part of the same system that's creating this turbulence. The other is the interaction between the dark green returns and the mountainous terrain beneath it, because each one of those on its own could potentially create turbulent activity. So being unfamiliar with that particular area, the two of those combined would give me pause. I really would want to go there.
Do we as a group think that the two pilots in the cockpit have the information they need to make a good decision?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think they have a reasonable amount of information to proceed, to work with. I don't think they can get more, other than some ride reports maybe.
But I'm certainly feeling a comfort level issue on the part of the pilot in command.
We haven't talked about the fact that they may or may not have researched pilot reports, although that's old data. They have air traffic control to ask about ride data as well. So there is a few more pieces of information they might get that could influence them one way or another.
Okay, so one of the things that someone mentioned, and that was talking to air traffic control and asking them what they're seeing. I think it was you, you say, hey, this is what a lot of times you'll be flying along and they'll say, hey, I show a line of thunderstorms at your 11 o'clock position, blah, 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 miles, and just giving you a heads up. If they don't offer that, then you ask them, hey, this is what I'm seeing, what are you seeing? Again, down in the Tampa area, the controller says, Well, your radar is better than mine, so whatever you got, go with that. So,
And a lot of times you can fly around the backside of it too, you know,
Right.
divert south, or like I did, I went south and then just come around and it's smooth on the backside of that stuff generally, so it's,
So I talked to ATC, see what they can help with. There are some radars that are better than others, depending on what they've got, and they can dial it down, like you said. Sometimes it's not, they're not worried about we're watching airplanes, not weather. But they can dial it down depending on the capability of the center or the approach control, and give you some information. So, yep.
That's where the advantage of XM over your in-flight radar is you can look at it and go, okay, I'm gonna have to divert 150 miles south to get around this, where you may not be picking up that big a picture with your onboard radar. So you can get some broad picture stuff of, okay, it's worth it to fly 100, 200 miles south to go around it, or now I wanna land and wait and goes.
But your point is, if we had both XM and radar, we'd have a much better setup, like your new airplane. But if we don't have the radar, all we've got is XM and what ATC can help us with. Okay? Let's go just a few more seconds, we'll pause again.
Landing, going back to Vegas and landing, although that's to me that's still a viable option, is not really going to provide them any more information than you can get off an iPad.
Does anybody agree with that or disagree with that? Go back to Vegas, reassess the situation. He said, you're not going to get anything more there than what you're already getting in the airplane.
That's wrong.
I think it's wrong.
I mean,
I think My Radar, the app I'm going to show you, the predictive radar, talk to flight service. You can call them from the air. You can get that information. Hey, center, since you can't help me, I'm going to go off frequency for a minute and talk to flight service and let them tell me what they're seeing on their radar at the moment. So this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Does it make sense with what you're seeing on your actual radar?
I mean, how many people get reception in the air on their iPad?
Well, you got your Stratus. Let's talk about that for a minute. He mentioned knowing your system and knowing what it's displaying for you. So, trying to remember what we were doing. Oh, no, it was we're coming back and there were thunderstorms around. So we had XM on the screen and I had Garmin Pilot on with an external antenna, so I'm getting the returns on there, and I'm getting two totally different pictures. It's like, okay, now which one do you believe? So we were down below it, we were watching it, and the XM actually in that case was giving me a better display than what my Garmin Pilot was showing. But the gentleman mentioned you can get a green or a yellow or a red return that it may be a very high base thunderstorm. If you can see it, you can navigate your way around it. Knowing your system is the important part. We're going to cover more about that in just a moment too. What is it really telling me? What's yellow on one may be dark green on another, or maybe red on another. You can't just, all yellow is not the same.
does ADSB refresh different rates than XM? I assume it does, it's a whole different system.
I think it does. I don't use ADSB that much.
Yeah, I'm curious about that, I have my little one, but I don't have to apply that
Yeah.
long distance.
The point is, if you're going to use it, practice with it first. Understand what it's really giving you. Make sure it's not illegitimate data that you're looking at. That's the less than you want.
The ADSP is less granular than XM, granular. So you gotta, if there's a little bit, it's pixelated really.
It's better,
So
it's
if you,
more accurate.
it's less accurate.
Less accurate.
If you have a little spot that it detects yellow, let's say, the whole spot will be yellow.
Oh, really?
It's not as pretty as XM, which
The XM's hard to beat, it's pretty good, other than
pretty good.
radar. Cirrus needs to put a radar in their wing.
I agree.
Next. They need to.
that's Gen 6. No, 7, I mean.
Or with ADSB. No, you're not going to find that anymore.
No, it's an escape, not a way to get more information.
Right, and a lot of times we've traditionally said we'll land and get a briefing or something, that's ancient history now. So we've got pretty much everything that we need to do. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't try and negotiate some other, variation on an escape route or alternate route. But I don't think I would be happy with going straight ahead, that's for sure.
What
in any way.
What would you select?
maybe make a 180, go back to the valley, head down towards Palm Springs, something like that, that might buy you some time, but you're flying away from home, so you're not really gaining anything, you're just burning gas going in the wrong direction.
To the direct route
Yeah,
flight.
so I kind of agree with you, there's really not a lot to be gained by that.
So one option I haven't talked about is if the thunderstorms are being caused by a front, for example, and you've got this front moving through and there's thunderstorms in front of it, is to land and let that pass over and then take off again because it's now behind you. So that's another option that we have depending on what's causing the thunderstorms.
Where do you land though?
Prior to getting to the thunderstorms. So if you're watching them, they're it seems obvious, right? But you're watching it on XM and you're seeing it coming and you're going, there's no way I'm going through that. So where's my airport that's closer to me? I'm gonna land there. Hey center, I wanna land there. Let the storm blow over. Now I can take off again and go. So it's another
Make sure you
option.
call them and ask me if they have an hangar.
Yeah, exactly.
If they have a what?
Have a hangar,
Have a
protect
hangar.
your airplane.
Yeah.
Who knows how much hail is gonna come
Hail,
out of that?
yeah. I was just
So you may not be
yeah.
taking off again. Who knows?
You finish the audio, or is that where we're stopped?
No, you can finish, there's just a few more seconds.
And, what's the worst if you went back to Vegas, you rent a car, a couple hours, you're home, you gotta go back and get the plane next week or something, going back that way has almost no downside. You're only 30, 40 miles back to Vegas.
Except listening to your plane partner just, chewing you out the whole way home, right?
That's a good transition there, because
Yeah.
you mentioned, Jeff, you got two pilots, and generally that's a plus. But in this situation, is it a plus? Because we have a little divergence here. And the pilot in command isn't necessarily the most experienced, but they're the pilot in command. And the other pilot may be leading you in a direction you don't want to go. Wally, you've flown with a lot of different pilots, and you've seen this interaction. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a very good possibility that the experienced pilot can talk the inexperienced pilot into doing something that's probably not too smart. And as the inexperienced pilot, you're going to tend to take experience from this other person who has allegedly been in this kind of weather. And as you point out in the scenario, it's a learning experience, but that pilot may learn something they didn't want to learn.
Yeah, OJT is just that. It's OJT, and there's a upside and a downside to that way of learning.
Well, I'd be afraid that the regional pilot might be thinking of the flying through yellow returns in terms of what effect it has on the regional airliner, as opposed to flying Lion and a Columbia 400.
And being equipped with real-time radar.
Yeah, she probably didn't have NexRad.
Probably not.
There's
No.
probably two different kinds of yellow that are being talked about there
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
One's like forward-looking yellow, and one's
And
40
you're right,
plus DVZ.
and it's real-time information as opposed to information with some delay. Yes.
But that gets back to how do you resolve a conflict in the cockpit while we're in the air? And the roles have to be established in the airlines and military and stuff. There's established protocol. The airlines have spent millions of dollars doing all the CRM training and how to resolve these conflicts. But now you have one person who's been trained in that and one who hasn't. And how do you resolve that headbutting?
It brings us full circle back to least comfortable pilot wins.
And not only are they sort of partners in the airplane, they're partners in business, so this puts a different strain on the relationship here.
Different spin. And you talked, as an option, a conscious decision, okay, you're the pilot in command now, which is, kind of a little bit silly, but there can be a change of command that is done more subtly than that is even more dangerous, because there is a below the level change of command, and then you really have nobody flying the airplane, nobody in charge, and this vehicle is progressing along, rudderless, and that's a very dangerous situation.
So, as John said, you need to establish the roles before you take off, and as pilot in command, I will be acting as pilot in command of this flight. I would like you to help me with this, and this, and this. I appreciate whatever input you have here, but ultimately I'm the pilot in command. And you could use, now, we talk about this being an educational experience. Is that, are we now almost talking about this as being a dual instructional situation? Are you now acting in the capacity of an instructor, teaching me how to do this? I think that it would be very valid to have an experienced pilot on board of the airplane to be able to help you better evaluate the situation ahead, but not necessarily to talk you into going into a hazardous situation. Just to see that, yeah, you can do this if you really think about it. And I am concerned, we do see, I do see evidence of this a lot in the general aviation community, where there is a progressive or rolling assumption of risk, the normalization of risk, if we talk about that. That, you know, if, I mentioned it in the op brief there, if they do go through the yellow and they do land at Santa Barbara, what does that teach the lesser experienced pilot? Okay, things that I thought were rules that I should not violate are now okay to give it a shot and see how it works. Pretty soon you'll be flying into, well, let's see if we can go through a little bit of this pink and red on the side, if you're not careful.
So I think we've identified some traps that exist with radar and interpretation of radar, and recognizing that we're not looking at a radar display. There are lags in the information, and all of these things can contribute to us making very poor decisions. Along with that, we have to recognize that anytime we're in a cockpit with another pilot, there needs to be a clear delineation of who's the pilot in command and the roles and responsibilities that both of them have.
Okay, so he made a very good point, which is...
Tom, you've identified some certain...
K.
Okay.
I don't know what we're talking about. K, he pauses it, and the K starts it again on the computer. So you go out and you do something, in this case he gave the example, so I flew through a little bit of yellow and it worked out just fine.
Hold my beer, watch this.
Yeah, sort of watch this. So next time, now this pilot's by themselves, and they go, well, I went through yellow last time. Well, guess what? The yellow this time may not be the same as what the yellow was last time. So you can set yourself up for a big disaster if you're not careful by learning from, oh, that was fine, that worked out just fine. And then you say, oh, next time I can do that again. That's okay. And next time may not be okay. So that was a good point they made there. Okay. So, after our last meeting, I'm home watching the nightly news, and I see two things that got my attention were the airplane came out of the sky in many pieces and very far apart. Pieces spread very far apart. Okay. Sounds to me like they threw into a thunderstorm.
Not a lot of things are going to break
Not a lot of things are going to tear the airplane apart.
I should have brought us zeros.
Yeah.
Look at that.
That's not the first 210 that came apart in the air either.
That's right.
That is not the first 210 that's lost in that.
Right. So, here they talk about left debris, fuselage went down heavily wooded area, 3 debris sites a mile from the main body of the plane. So obviously something tore this airplane apart in flight, and pieces just came tumbling down. Okay.
Was there a flight aware on this?
Yep.
That's what we're talking
That's what this is.
Boy, what a
Okay,
segue.
sorry.
Look at that.
Sorry. Forget what I
You
said.
are right on. So they're going from here, trying to get to there.
Wow.
They're heading up here toward Birmingham. We don't know what capabilities they had as far as any kind of weather detection, XM, I don't know, iPad, I don't know. You would have thought center might have told them something. But center can't stop you from flying into bad weather. They can just give you a heads up. Hey, oh, by the way, there's a line of storms moving from the west to the east, and you're approaching it. You're going to be there pretty soon. Okay? Look at the track here. I don't know how many of you look at flight aware. We have altitude here. We have airspeed in blue. And all of a sudden, right here, they go up and down. So
wow,
we're going in 1 minute. We're going from 8,300 feet to 9,500 feet, 7,600 feet, minus 4,000 feet per minute.
oh my gosh.
So they are just getting torn apart right here. So this is the timestamp starting 328 up to 331. So minus 1,000, minus 1,800, minus 2,000, minus 4,000, plus 1,200, plus 1,800. they're just getting tossed around and torn apart at that point.
Where's the forward speed? Oh, knots, okay. So look at that, down to 90, 131, 95,
Yeah,
and
here's
200.
your,
So he's diving down.
Here's your airspeed right here.
It's huge.
200, 214, 95, all in a minute. Imagine what that's doing to you inside the airplane. And the wings are going, phew, there goes the elevator, and there goes another piece. It's like, holy cow. So I have to disagree with that commentator.
So
They
where
said-
did they go down on that map?
Yep, so right where that little, right about here. Go to the next one.
So they were in the gust front.
Right there. Well, the problem becomes, and we'll see it in a minute, watch what happens with this storm. They're flying this way.
That's 1.
One what?
1 o'clock. This is 2 o'clock.
Okay, and they went down around 3 something, right? 3:30.
They were in it.
They were in
Fast moving too.
There's 3 o'clock. So they were going from here, that direction. You can see there's no way you're gonna work your way through all this stuff.
No, you were just
We
gonna
don't know
land.
if he tried to cut through a gap, if he had onboard weather, and he tried to cut through a gap between the yellows and the reds or not. Or did he try to go through a gap and then suddenly that became a yellow and a red? I mean, you don't ever wanna go through green, like right there.
I've seen those things totally solid from Galveston Bay all the way up to Lake Michigan,
Yeah.
Chicago.
Yep.
No way around it.
Yep, I got the call one night, we're heading east, and the controller says, there's a line of thunderstorms from the Gulf to Michigan. There's no way you're going through it. I said, okay, well, it's pretty obvious. So we landed and waited, we moved on, and we went a little further east, but yeah, same thing. The problem pilots run into is they go, well, gosh, there's a little gap right there, I'll just slice right through there. Given what we just learned, that may be right there now.
Yeah.
Or nowhere.
Or nowhere. Yeah, that may have gone away. Oh, by the way, there's a new one growing right there.
Yeah, you don't see the one
It's not
coming.
even showing up yet. So you don't cut through a line like that. It was just a cold front coming through. Cold front's back here pushing all this stuff up, causing all this
So they
storm.
should have landed it.
I
Should have
think
landed
they
back
lost
here
him.
somewhere.
I think that this radar was much closer to the time of the accident, and that accident's right up in here. I was listening to, trying to find any ATC transcript, and there wasn't anything, but I was listening to Birmingham, and they were talking right at around 3 o'clock of just a huge storm off the end of the runway.
So they were both pilots? They were both pilots?
I
Said
guess so.
experienced pilots, I think they were. Yeah,
Wow. And this was a couple of weeks ago? 3
Yes.
weeks?
right at the end of March. Yeah.
Man, that's awful.
I have a quick question if I may.
Sure.
Earlier in the session here tonight, talking about getting up over above the cloud deck, which is something I tend to do. I like to get up to 16.5 or whatever and park it and kick back and aviate. Get yourself into a situation like this here, which I have not been in, and now we're getting into
Yeah,
summertime.
above that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, getting above it. Let's say you've on the verge of, you've made a bad decision, you're about to shack yourself or whatever. You can't fly back. Going forward's not a good idea either. North, south, east, or west. What is it like up above that deck?
Depends where you are. If you're in the mountains in the summer, you
can't
in a
get
cirrus, you're never going to outclimb. So you better be between the mountaintops and the bottom of the clouds so
All
that
right.
you can see. Once you get in the clouds and you're IMC, you're in trouble.
CBs are gonna climb, bad ones are gonna climb over 40,000.
Yeah, you're never
Yeah, you'll
gonna,
never get above
you're never
it.
gonna outclimb a cumulus
You're never
buildup.
gonna get above the CBs.
No.
Airliners
Good.
don't climb above CBs.
No.
They go around.
Go around them. You know,
Because
if you got a nice stratus deck, nice low stratus, you can get above it. Then the problem is getting back down.
the other problem
Yes.
is the turbulence. Okay, so if you got this thunderstorm growing like this, there's a huge air mass still coming. You don't even see visually, because this storm's building and growing. So this upward air motion is just climbing like this. If you try to go above it, you're gonna get really beat up badly. So you don't go above them, give them a wide berth.
Perfect, thank you.
Don't go
Oh, yeah, no, that definitely answers
Don't go
it.
above them, don't go below them.
It's just a what if.
So,
I'm one of those guys, I'll stay on the ground, pardon my interruption.
good, no.
Yeah.
And that's a conservative approach, that's good.
They're on the ground.
Better
wishing
off
you were
down here.
flying.
Oh, yeah.
Than up there wishing you were down here. Yep. So I just did a quick snapshot. This is from, I believe it's called the Storm app, which is a free app, but it's not aviation, but it's a pretty neat deal because you can see the cold front here. And this was right after this accident. And then I said, let's go from Atlanta to Miami. And then you can click over here and you can see they're predicting severe outlook for thunderstorms along that route right there. So going from Atlanta to Miami, we're going to go right through severe thunderstorms. So obviously we don't want to go there that day. Going back to two things here. One, we said, how do we know if we can get in between some cloud layers and look for those thunderstorms and look for those rain shafts coming down? So these are called SKU-Ts, and it's a whole course in learning how to do a SKU-T, but the basic piece I want to show you is this one right here. You can see one's a temperature line and one's a dew point line. When the temperature and dew point come close together, like right there, there's clouds there. But when they spread apart like this, there's no clouds there, and there may potentially be some clouds here. So that might be an area where you could go through. This app is called SKU-T Log Pro. You can put in your route, and it'll show you all along the way what the weather is going to be as you're flying along. Okay, so you can see here the route as we're coming along, we're moving along on our different pin drops here. So we probably don't have any clouds there. We do some clouds there. We got clouds to there, but then nothing above that. You can see how this big wide gap is right here. No clouds above that one. No clouds there. Same thing on this one. Clouds up to there, but then nothing above it. So if you're trying to figure out where those cloud tops are, we just look at this and we go, well, right about whatever that altitude equates to over here.
More clouds higher up.
Yeah, way up here. And we're talking, that's up in the 40, 50,000 range here.
Okay, I can't see that.
I can't either. So the other thing that's on here, if you do your whole route, is that CAPE, convective availability potential energy, okay? And so right up here in the corner it says CAPE, okay? It'll tell you what it is, and so here you go. Convective available potential energy is a measure of how much potential those storms had to grow. And the potential for those thunderstorms, when you get the right ingredients, the humidity, the lifting action, then is the atmosphere unstable enough to let it grow. So here's their 1 to 1,500 positive CAPE, large or extreme. So if you see something in these ranges, you know you got a large potential or great potential for storms to build. So you want to give that a wide berth. You know they're going to grow if they build. If they develop, they're going to grow. Okay. So this is a picture of the day Dave and I were going down to Tampa.
Yes.
You can see all this.
Or not.
Or not. But, okay, we're watching. We're coming down this route right here. And we're watching this guy. We gave him a wide berth. Nothing here. This stuff was moving that direction. And we were going to right there. So we were able to get there and watching this the whole way to make sure it wasn't going to come back up this way. There's no green. And again, you're watching it over time, and we were able to get into the airport that day.
Pretty good light show on
It was a light show, yeah. A lot of lightning there. So I pulled up a screen on the Garmin Perspective, and this is what their decibel levels show. Okay? So again, understanding your particular piece of equipment is important. Is to know that this yellow on Garmin Perspective may not be the same yellow you see on your iPad or with your ADS-Bs. So knowing your equipment is very important. Okay. Here's that latency we talked about. NTSB actually put out a safety alert. 15 to 20 minutes is the next red significant delay there. Hopefully that's going to get better over time as you get more capabilities. don't know the date on
If
this
it's, the
bulletin.
problem is if you look at the delivery time in any of the products, that's the time it was delivered. It isn't the time that it was taken and assembled. So that's where the big latency can come
So when
through.
you're looking at your perspective and you see XM thunderstorm, it'll say 6 minutes or 2 minutes. That's the refresh on your screen. That's not, what he's saying, that's not from when they painted it, processed it, sent it up to the satellite, sent it back down. That's the last time your screen was updated, is what you're seeing on the perspective.
So what's updated on your screen could be 15 to 20.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yep.
Even if it's evident.
Okay, back up. Let me
Keep talking about perspective.
Okay, so let me just show you one app that I use and I like. So going back to what the guy said as well, you can't really do anything more in the ground than what we can do in the air. I disagree with that. Okay, so this app is called AeroVie, A-E-R-O-V-I-E. When you put in your route of flight, it will actually warn you that there's some problems. And it'll tell you that the Cape is high. And I'm not seeing it now, so let's see. I'm going to put on the current radar and let's see what's going on. Okay. You can see we're going into some yellow/red there. But the thunderstorms have moved since I did this earlier. But it will warn you that the Cape is really high along your route. As soon as you put the flight plan city pairs in or airport pairs in there, it'll say, hey, be careful. And then you can drill down more and you can look at that profile view. So you can look down here and see, and it'll tell you along the top what the Cape is along the whole route. The part I really like is what they call the predictive radar, or radar forecast. Okay, so right now we're looking at, this is like when you're at home watching your local TV weathercaster telling you, look at what we think is going to happen. This is an aviation version of that. Okay, so I'm just going to run the loop and we can see what the thunderstorms are doing. And you can see the timestamp up in the top left there. So Chris and I are going to Duluth on Thursday. We'll be able to look at this and see if we have any potential thunderstorms that are going to bother us on the way up there or coming back on Friday. This one's looking out. Let me pause it for a minute. There's a little delay in our internet here.
You find that to be a reliable tool, Chuck?
Yes, I do. Okay, so there's Wednesday 6:30. Here's Wednesday 9:30. Thursday 10:30. This is us going to Duluth. Let's see what happens here. Who said Bob needs to get faster internet? Okay, so we're going from Centennial here up to Duluth there at this time. I don't see any potential problems there from a thunderstorm standpoint. Okay. And they have another, there's two models here. One actually goes out even further. So that one goes out to Wednesday at 10. The other one goes out to Stop. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to show you there's tools out there we can use that's why I disagree with those guys when they said you can't get any more data by being on the ground than you can up in the air, because you definitely can.
Is there another site for predictive weather, the HRR, high resolution?
Is there another site?
Yeah,
I think you can get it off the web in different spots.
Up where?
Off the web, possibly even aviationweather.gov will have it.
What do they charge for that?
It's not as much as the other ones. I think it's like $69 or something.
A year.
Yeah, he gives you a 30-day whatever trial. I know the developer is a really good guy. He's a serious guy. There's some really other pretty cool features on their checklist for the Solaris and some other things that he's put into it. You know, it's plug me back on, sorry.
AEROVIE, is that right?
It's,
Let me tell you.
You have it?
Yes.
well, I had the trial, I don't think all of it.
Okay, so it's one of the only apps I know where you can have your map. I put the overlay on of
Do you use this just for planning, or do you use it in flight?
both. So here's the surface prog on top of my sectionals.
Do you use it in place of the flight?
Yep.
Is this your go-to now?
One of my go-tos. So if you can't figure it out, I use different things for different purposes. So mainly I'm using Garmin Pilot, and I'm using this one together. And then the other one I gotta mention is the, here we go, Chris, here's Thursday. Thursday, 6 p.m. Thursday, 6 a.m. Looks like we're still good.
What's Friday?
Friday, oops, actually it skipped Friday. There's Saturday morning, which is nice.
I have things to do Friday, sure, Friday.
Yeah, interesting.
It probably is.
Friday, I think we're gonna have rain, but it's not showing up. It's going from Thursday to Saturday, which is interesting.
It's
I mean, don't fly on Friday?
Yeah, don't fly
It's
on
good.
Friday.
Good Friday.
Oh,
it is.
That's right, it is
Ooh.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I just
say
extended
that.
it out.
She really
All right.
tested it.
So, I summarized with what I'm gonna call conservative pilot rules for thunderstorms. And those that weren't here last time, this Dr. Strawley is the guy that did all this research on all the apps and all the information in the XM, and he basically says, if you got any yellows or reds, then stay even away from the green, because the green could become yellow rather quickly. So he says give the green 20-mile wide berth. If all you see is light green, and there's no yellows or reds, then it's just light precipitation. But if it starts going yellow and red, then you don't know where the next yellow is going to show up. Hopefully it's not where you are. Never fly IMC with embedded thunderstorms. That's my rule. Make sure you know how to find where the clouds are before you go, and that's that log SQ2 log P diagram. This goes back to what Gary said, a good weather picture, why the thunderstorms are forming in your pre-flight planning, talking to flight service. Capabilities, limitations of your equipment, so you're using your iPad, you're using your XM. I heard this a lot in their discussion. Oh, well, if we don't go, we're not going to get there. Well, if you go, you might not get there either. So don't let get-home-itis become part of your decision making. And if you need to get a car, it's not that far to drive from Vegas, and you'll get the airplane later when the weather's better.
Even if it is that far to drive.
Yeah, you can jump on Southwest, whatever. And then they talked about the least comfortable pilot wins. Don't let that regional pilot talk you, the younger and experienced pilot, into doing something that you don't want to do. So, last thing is, if you don't have an account with 1-800-WXBrief.com, it's a great website. Really nice, good stuff on there. So when Chris and I are going, I've got a flight plan in there it will email me and say, oh, by the way, we just had an AirMech show up, or a SIGMET
Yeah,
show up, or,
That's nice.
so 1-800-WXBrief.com, it's free.
It used to be Lucky, but now it's something else.
Lidos, or something like
Lidos,
that.
Lidos.
But it's a great website for, who uses ForeFlight? Who doesn't? Who doesn't? The same weather brief you see on ForeFlight with the little colored dots and things to make sure you got everything, that's what, we got it from those guys. So it's a government contractor that supplies all this data, and then the app makers suck it in and use it, but it's the main source for all the weather stuff also. So file your flight plans, store your flight plans, check your weather, legitimate weather brief on there. It's a good site, it's free. So, okay. Anybody got questions, discussion? Doing okay on time?
We're well over.
Well over?
That's about where
Nobody
we
got up and
started.
left, so that's good.
It was about where we started. We started 11 minutes late.
Waiting for stragglers.
Yeah.
And whose fault is that?
All the people that were late.
Yours, you were late.
I was not.
Okay, next meeting.
First Saturday here, spring weather hazards with Mike Centennial. It's a great one, and I'm certain he's going to talk thunderstorms. So if you want to continue this discussion. And then we're here May 9th, and we will have Jeff Hamilton from Tracon come. So come with your best ATC questions. And he was talking to us about some things that he wanted to talk about. It's pretty fascinating stuff. So thank you guests for coming. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Did you see the meeting invites that are going around for the Denver Metrodome, the aerodrome restructuring?
Metroplex.
Yes.
Metroplex, yeah.
And I think Colorado Pilots Association, or CABA, has got that list somewhere on their website too. And you're going to every one of them.
No.
Oh,
At least two. I went earlier, I guess, last week. Must have been a Thursday night.
Are they getting receptive to the complaint about 9,000 feet along the foothills?
Not that
yet.
they're gonna change anything, they just,
They listen well, and that's it.
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah. Right.
But they did talk about trying to get it into Class B. I mean, at least come out of their mouth without
That would be good.
drawing it out of them. And that would be great. You know, it'd be a lot of help.
Sure.
We're gonna skim right through that corner for a while. You can get
All right. Well, you're still welcome. There's plenty of refreshment left and good conversation, and thank you guys for coming.